May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer.
Amen.
I love parables. They're puzzles to me. What is Jesus trying to tell me in this parable? And I will confess, this is, for me, a very hard parable. It goes against the grain of our daily life so harshly that I struggle with it. But before I tackle this, I would like to put things somewhat in perspective. We're moving on. We're in chapter 20 of Matthew's Gospel. What has happened? Just as recently as chapter 16, Jesus posed the question to Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" To which he replied, "The Christ, the Son of the living God." The very next chapter, we read about the transfiguration. Then we get to chapter 18, and they begin to discuss the kingdom of heaven. And the disciples ask the question. They begin the dialogue. They ask Jesus, "Who is the greatest in heaven?" And he continues teaching them. We're running out of time. In just 2 more Sundays, Jesus will be outside Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives. He is trying to get them ready for what is coming. And in this period of time, we will have a number of references. The kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like. Kingdom of heaven is like. And not one of those answers is it like anything here on earth. And today, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner with his vineyard. Can you imagine what would happen if you had a vineyard, a farm, a field, you hired laborers, and you treated them the way they were treated here? Some people labored all day and got a denarius. Some people labored just an hour or so, and they got the same pay. Our court system would be flooded with lawsuits. That's not fair. I worked harder. I am entitled to more. What's Jesus telling us in this? You can't earn your way. Heaven is not like that. Heaven, everybody is going to be treated equally. And before I had read the rest of the lessons, I'll start with the gospel first. What does our first lesson tell us about? The Israelites in their exodus, 40 years in that desert. And what did God do? They wanted water, he gave them water. They wanted meat, he gave them doves. And he gave them manna. I'm sorry that the lesson this morning didn't tell you the whole story about manna, because I think it's important we understand how it went. They were told to pick enough for that day. On Saturday, they could pick more because they wouldn't pick on Sunday. Just enough for that day. And they used a measure, an ophah, just an ophah full. Some people fudged. They took more. But somehow or other, when it came time for them to eat it, all they had was just the measure that they were allowed. Some people did not get enough, but they got the same measure. Some tried to cheat. I'm going to get as much as I can grab while I can grab it. Sounds a little like today. And what happened to it? Overnight it rotted. You couldn't eat it. God created every one of them equally. And that's what the landowner did. He treated everyone equally. That's a concept that is very difficult, I find, for us in the world in which we live today to understand and to follow. God in Jesus, God was trying to teach the Hebrews a new way to live. They had been in Egypt, and they learned Egypt's way of life. Domination against submission, rich and poor, powerful and powerless. The world hadn't changed much. When Jesus came, it was the same. Dominion, submission, rich, poor, powerful. No one is willing to trust in God. A little later in this service, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. And it addresses this. Give us this day our daily bread. It doesn't say, Lord, give us enough so that we don't have to work, we don't have to. Give us an abundance, more than we can eat. We ask God for our daily bread, not tomorrow's, not Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays' bread, our daily bread. Things are going to be different in heaven. And are you ready for it? That's the question I had to ask myself. Am I ready for this total upheaval? Where nobody is richer or poorer than anybody else. Where nobody is more important than anybody else. We have what we need when we need it. And we are grateful. That's heaven. Are you ready? You won't be able to lord it over anybody. You won't be able to put your finger up and say, I'm number one. There will be none of that. Absolutely none. One of the commentators that I came across wrote, this parable compares the kingdom of heaven not to the vineyard, not to the laborers, not to anything except the generous character of the landowner. God is even more generous than that. He will give us what we need. He is so generous that we cannot fathom the depth of that generosity. Am I going to get, when I meet God, what I deserve? I'm not sure I want what I deserve. God will give me what I need. I really believe that each one of us needs to take a look at the world in which we live, how much we conform to it, and ask ourselves whether we are ready for a total reversal, the kingdom of heaven. Amen.
Amen.